Demand smoothing. Demand smoothing is a strategy that's used as a means to level out the demand to match the capacity of your supply chain. We use incentives to shift the demand to further out so that you either shift it to a low capacity period or to your beyond lead time area. For instance, Boeing uses this a lot. Like when Boeing sells 100 aircraft, they obviously cannot build 100 aircraft immediately. So what they'll do is they'll say, "Hey, look, we'll they plug the demand into their capacity, and they schedule aircraft manufacturing while giving discounts to airlines based upon how long they're willing to wait for the product." So this is a type of demand smoothing that we use. So this is used in an attempt to maintain a constant flow of products at or below capacity. And that's important to understand. Demand smoothing is a very good strategy that can be used to relieve pressure on your supply chain so that you can either address lead time or increase capacity. Usually when we deal with demand smoothing, we're looking at capacity. We're looking at where your demand is relative to capacity. So last week I introduced this chart here. So demand versus lead time. This week I'm going to change it a little bit to make the left hand, instead of the percentage of orders, excuse me, it'll be the number of orders. And then I added a line for capacity. So ideally you have all your demand below the capacity. In this example, you'll see that your at once customers, you have more customers than you could service with your supply chain. And even at your lead time period, you still have too many people. So what you can do is we're going to try to shift that to the right. I mentioned this last week. So we're going to shift it to the right. Now, this curve will not always look like this. It's important to remember that. Sometimes you may have a big lump beyond your lead time. So what you would do is you look at your demand anywhere that your expected demand is above the capacity line. That's an important thing. Your graph will not always look like this, and please remember that. Now, as I said, the idea is to move your demand throughout your lead time below your capacity line. Okay, now in this example, we still have people beyond the lead time that is still above capacity. What happens sometimes is you'll get your demand. What I've seen it personally is even if you demand smooth, your marketing team may still do sales that may push your demand above capacity. I've seen one instance where a very industrious manager landed a big sale of electronic systems, which significantly impacted the capacity. And he actually got an award for this. He got an incentive for this, but the supply chain was unable to provide the capacity for the order, and as a result, what ended up happening is they ended up increasing capacity through making people work harder, which is usually not a good idea for the long term. For the short term, it's fine, but in the long term, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You accelerate things like wear and tear and morale and burnout, such that in the long term, your ability to maintain that level actually is diminished, and your capacity in the long term is decreased dramatically. So what you would do here is, if you see this forecast, you would go to the customers that are in the beyond lead time and see which those customers would be interested in various demand smoothing strategies. And I'm going to cover, I'm going to cover that now. So here are some demand smoothing strategies I've pulled these from like Amazon. Boeing uses some of these. There's probably a lot that I did not list here, but these are the most common ones. When you look at marketing materials, when they talk about demand smoothing, they talk about reducing advertising and marketing. If you have coupons or rebates or incentives, you may want to stop those for a certain period to reduce the demand. If you understand that a lot of your demand is because people have coupons for your product, stop giving the coupons for a certain period so that your demand smoothing comes down, so that your demand comes back to below capacity. In some cases, in instances where your supply chain, where you have orders, in the future, you may not be able to do that. So that may not be feasible from a supply chain standpoint. It just depends on the type of product. So sometimes if you have a short use, high consumption product, reducing the advertisements and marketing can be a very good strategy. Now, offer smaller shipments spread out over longer time. This is good for customers that order large items in bulk and then store it in a warehouse. In the industry that I work in, that's very popular. You'll have, because the way that the government does contracts, they'll give you money for a year so that you can buy materials for the system that you support over that 1 year period. So, and it's you spend it or lose it type scenario. So you may walk up to a company and say, hey, I want 5,000 of these parts to support this system. Well, if you're the manufacturer, we say, hey, look, we can't give you 5,000 right now, but we know that you don't use 5,000 immediately. So tell you what, why don't we work with you to determine if we can spread those 5,000 over a 12-month period? Maybe we only give you, 500 a month or 400 a month. We may give you 500 a month for the first, 8 months, and then spread out the remainder of the last 4 months. So this is a good incentive, because what this does, this allows a company to lock into a certain price while also not having to worry about storage costs and shipping costs. You could delay the shipping further in the future, and you can encourage people to take this strategy by giving them either discounts over so many items or offering to store the materials. You may say, hey, look, we will guarantee 500 a month for this time, and we will store them and ensure that you have the product when needed. Obviously, your pricing strategy needs to include all these additional costs, but sometimes this is a valid strategy. So offer lower costs for delayed shipping. Amazon uses this a lot. So let's say you order something on Amazon and they don't have it immediately available. They may say, hey, look, do you have it now? Or we'll give you free shipping if you want to wait 5 to 7 days. In many cases, some people say, you know what, I don't need it right now. I'll just take the discount on the shipping and wait the 5 to 7 days. This is how Amazon demand smooths, using shipping as an incentive to buyers. And then you can also offer a comparable product with a higher capacity as a substitute. Let's say you have 2 comparable product lines, and one product line has very little capacity. You may say, hey, look, we will offer you the same product. Usually it's one that has a higher value. I'm going to be posting something about brands and value proposition. It'll be a product that has a higher value proposition than another product. So as a result, you may encourage someone to take this higher capacity product instead of the product that has a high demand compared to capacity. So that's something you can do. Amazon does this also. Like, for instance, you may look at a route. Like, for instance, recently I bought a router, and the router that I wanted, they said it wasn't immediately available, but on the side it said, hey, here's a router that meets everything you want. It's a newer model, and we're going to sell it to you for less. So I bought the one that was had better specifications and less price. Made sense to me. So, because Amazon probably did not have a lot of the older router, in stock. So it made sense to them too. So that's a good demand smoothing strategy that you could use. So for pricing recommendations, this is part of those pricing strategies that you can use in conjunction with your demand smoothing strategy. So reduce lead times as much as possible. Obviously, sometimes you do demand smoothing as a means to smooth out demand in the short term to give you a chance to increase capacity. So you want to both increase capacity and reduce lead times of the products going out. That's important. And what that does is that actually shifts your graph. If I'll go back to this, reducing lead times actually shifts. Sorry about that. So actually, reducing lead times actually shifts your whole graph to the right, so that your more of your beyond lead time customers become at lead time customers. Okay, so your bars will be like this instead of where they were. Okay, that's important to understand. So and of course capacity. When we deal with capacity, we move this bar up. So now you have more products you can do in each of your categories, and you're at once, and you're at lead time customers. You have more people in there, so you have more lead time capacity and more product capacity. If that makes sense. So going back, so that's probably going to be the last time I'm going to talk about demand smoothing. I'm going to try to post something on brand so you understand how value propositions work. So there were some very good comments in the class on brands and how quality relates to price or anything else. So just some extra stuff to think about as you go forward.